Brews and Banter Podcast. Banter Podcast. Brews and Banter Podcast. What up, what up, what up? Welcome to Brews and Banter Podcast. I'm your host, Rob G. And with me, as always, is the legendary Brew Crew. What up, fellas?
I got water, I got, juice or whatever. It's like, y'all need twin legs? Matter of fact, I do.
My question to everybody is, does Delaware have an actual culture? This is the podcast that we talk about beer, but we also talk about a lot of things that's happening in the world, politics, movies, anything really that comes to our mind while we're here sampling these brews. Grab a drink and pull up a chair. What up, what up, what up? Welcome to Brews and Banter Podcast, a little special edition for the folks who don't already know that what we're doing on here. So I want to welcome you to the podcast. This is where the topic is the rockin' and the brew. Well, I'll be the fuel, and I'm your host, Rob G. And as you can see, riding solo today, but that's cool because we are always still here with the legendary Brew Crew. Even if they're not here, they are here in spirit, and maybe some of them might join us as we go on. And get through some of the program because we do have a special guest with us this evening. So without further ado, I do want to bring in our guest to the podcast from ModestMan Brewing. We have Ash Sheehan from out of Keene, New Hampshire. So,
cheers. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you are here. Before we get into stuff, we always ask to know what everybody is drinking on. So what are you drinking today? And we always start with our guests. So what are you drinking on today?
All right, I'm drinking on my own liquid. So this is one of our probably flagship double IPAs, kind of what we're known for. This is the most beautiful thing in this world, 8.5 straight Citra, New England.
Oh, nice. And I got, even though I didn't get this from my trip in Italy, I am drinking on a beer I drank a lot in Italy. It is the Birra Moretti. So I enjoyed it. It's a nice, lager. It's nothing too crazy, but it was nice and smooth in it. And it was funny because I was drinking this outside the Vatican, so I thought that was kind of funny. I was drinking when we had just finished the Vatican tour. And I was like, let me go to this food cart. And I was like, let me grab this. And so
you brought some back? And you brought some back?
Actually, I went to the a local liquor store here, and I saw it. I was like, oh, I had never seen it before. And it might have already been there, but now I was more aware of it. Yeah. So I was like, oh, there it is.
Now every time you drink it, you're thinking of the Vatican. That's a good image.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about that time, or just the whole trip on the time in Rome, because in Rome and Italy, all that good stuff. It was a good time. All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and we were excited to know more about ModestMan, about you, how you got into the beer world. So without further ado, I want to again thank you again. So I'll give you some more round of applause. And for those who don't know, who are listening, we both will be down at Barrel and Flow this coming weekend. So we wanted to jump on it and have a little chit chat about what's going on, what you're bringing down for people to sample and all that good stuff. So once again, Ash, thank you for coming on, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Yeah. So for the listeners to understand, so Barrel and Flow this coming weekend, Dave Bracey's big event. Promoting, I guess, cultural and diversity in the brewing industry and just the whole arts and culture. So we're really excited and blessed to be able to be a part of the event. I was supposed to go last year, but we were going to Denver for the Brewers Association meeting and didn't get a chance to go. So for the listeners, the way that this festival works is they pair you up with somebody, whether, I guess, kind of broad strokes, whether it's another brewery, and you sort of do a collab of some sort. So we teamed up with these cats, Brews and Banter. They were time kind of got messed up. We had some problems with our brew house. They were going to come up to New Hampshire and brew a beer with us. That didn't work out. So a lot of this went back and forth on email. So we're doing Brews and Banter represents 4 cats, and they all seem to drink different beer. And one of the things that was pitched was a pineapple upside down cake, cream ale. Right. And I was like, all right, how are we going to fit this in our schedule? So we sort of met you in the middle. We did, we did this, a similar beer to this back in about a year ago with another brewery. It's a sour, and we do, it's a kettle sour, fruited sour, and everybody kind of does them differently. Ours tend to really, it's not too thick, tends to really strike this balance with the sweet and the sour, not too sweet. So we went with some mango, blood orange, and pineapple in a pretty classic like Berliner Weiss recipe with a little bit on steroids, if you will, right? So like an 8%. Because right now, like, people in the hot sun, people want a nice sour, but they also want the ABV. So we're going to be bringing that beer down to you guys on Saturday. And I think we're also bringing some IPAs that we do up north down for the festival as well. And then I think Mike's, which is a hot beer bar down in Pittsburgh, getting some of both of those beers. So they'll be pouring those down in Pittsburgh. I've never been down to Pittsburgh. I got family down there. One of the guys that pours in my tap room and works at the concert venue across the street from our brewery, he's from there. So he's going down to pour with his buddy. So the 3 of us will be there. And because we got enough people, I should be able to schmooze and talk to everybody, which that's the best part, Yeah,
absolutely. Because it's a good time for sure. But the beer sounds amazing. What's the name of the beer?
You tell me, man. It's your thing. Pass me another.
Pass me another. So I got
Yeah, do it. There it is.
I had to hit the horns because that is what we do when we say "pass me another." So I had to do it. So the sounds great. I know Lou majority of the part I think would be pretty because one, Dev is a big ABV guy, so he loves everything above 7.5%.
Yeah.
And Lou and Yoda love sour, so they're
and you wanted the cream ale, but so did you want pineapple? I was trying to feel like, can I get all 4 of you guys with one beer?
Yeah. Well, I'm not really picky guy. I drink. I try anything at least once.
It was interesting, because I was it just finished today, I think. And I was a little worried about how pineapple's pretty strong and acidic. And when you're already using a sour yeast. So we went 40% mango, 40% blood orange, and 20 pineapple, and the pineapple's still in the front, but I think it was a good move because the acidity from the pineapple is not overwhelming. It's smooth. And then we dry hop a little bit with Galaxy and Citra in it, which it's subtle, but it's there. And I think over time, in another couple of weeks, those hops kind of come out.
Yeah,
but it's not thick, man. A lot of these sours up here, like the sort of sour IPA, it's not really that. It's its own little thing. It's its own animal.
All right, so it's not really thick like a smoothie type thing. So
no, we don't do any of those.
That's,
yeah. I guess that kind of ties into where we're coming from in our story. So I'm the owner. I'm not a brewer. I've kind of spent most of my life in the restaurant business. Worked in Maine, South Carolina, Los Angeles. I think I always worked in high-end restaurants, so I have a little background in wine. But I think I've always loved the experience of food and beverage, so I opened a taco restaurant, kind of taco bar, taco craft beer kind of fusion thing in the city of Keene, New Hampshire back in 2014.
Okay.
And New England was sort of the beginning of the New England IPA with Heady Topper, mid to late 2000s. So Keene, New Hampshire is right on the Vermont-Mass border. So we're close to Treehouse. We're close to all the stuff that was popping in Vermont. But for some reason, New Hampshire, you couldn't get none of the restaurants or bars had any of this good beer. So New Hampshire's right in the middle of Maine, Mass, and Vermont. And for some reason, the beer was never good. And part of that reason is some of the laws. It's one of only 15 states that are self-controlled. So it's sort of like a monopoly over the liquor scene. So the laws are hard. So I had a hard time owning a brewery because of the 3-tier system. It's like New Hampshire, New Jersey, a couple other states are really messed up. So New Hampshire is one of them. So I think that's part of what made New Hampshire beer kind of slow to happen. So I've got this like taco joint back in 2014, and I'm saying to the distributors like, yo, let me get some heady topper. Let me get some sip of sunshine. Let me get some other half, you know? And they're like, no, dude, that's not how the game works. Like, you're not going to be able to pour that. So, yeah, the simplest thing was let's open a brewery. So, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I guess that is a solution to the problem.
And then, you know, and I got tied up into red tape for a couple years. And it really, I think I was really aggressively trying to go at it in 2016. And I didn't even, by the time I finally got a building in 2018, an old bank in our town, like dead center in the, you know, a lot of breweries now are going in like industrial zones, right?
Right.
Where you got loading docks and stuff. Because, you know, I've always been more in like restaurant management, and I like when I got into craft beer, you know, I liked the experience. So I'd travel all over, go to San Diego, LA, and it was like I liked high ceilings, and I liked music playing and bass dropping, and like when you could bring all those experiences into one, that's really what drew me to the whole thing. So I found this old bank, an old TD bank, and it had high ceilings and had a lot of character. The brewers were like, well, dude, like there's no loading dock. I'm like, we'll make it work, man. You know, because I'm more about that experience. And so now we got a place that's cool. You know, it feels good inside. And yeah, so we opened in November 2019. So we had a good 3 months before the pandemic hit us. And
so you kind of thought like Steve Jobs, where you like, here's the container, guys. Let's make the brewery work, which is actually kind of cool. That makes some of the cooler breweries when they have spots that are not, like you said, industrial parks and just square boxes, where it has some characters. Like I know I've seen some that have been in old churches or old banks, and even some of the warehouses that were done too. So that's kind of cool. That, I mean, like, because that was Steve Jobs thing. Like, here's the container design that I have. Now let's see how we can get that computer.
Yep.
In this box.
Yeah, I did. I
cool.
did a few things like that. So it was one, because I kind of looked at it and said, because we're in New England, right? So there's a lot of really good beer up here. So it was like, how do you stand out? And I kind of looked at it from a trifecta kind of standpoint of like, well, it's got to be the quality of the beer, it's got to be the experience, the brand, that whole thing, the experience of when you walk in the door, and then it's the customer service. So in my restaurant experience, I'd always dealt with I'd worked at some 5-star restaurants, so I really understood customer service. And, you know, when you look at breweries and you start to analyze them, like they get ripped a lot, right? Because you get like a lot of breweries are opened by like a couple buddies who are like science teachers in 7th grade and are like, yo, let's mortgage the house and open a brewery. So they don't know anything about customer service. Like, it's hard, man. A lot goes into it. You're not just making beer. You have to run a successful business. So, you know, and I think 90% of all breweries right now are owned by guys who are like home brewers, who maybe never worked in commercial breweries. So my vision was, look, I'm not that, but I understand customer service. I understand, like, you know, the quality of the product. So I can team up with a brewer. And I found a brewer who had worked in bigger breweries, like, Long Trail, some of the bigger New England breweries. So they knew all the operational stuff, you know? But in our vision was, you know, up here, man, like if you're not making a New England IPA, you know, it's like what 90% of what sells. And my brewer was kind of like, man, I want to make a Kolsch. I want to make a Pilsner. I was like, all right, dude, I got a plan. If we make the best New England IPA, then they're going to come in to drink that, and we're going to sell them Kolsch. And that's exactly what's happening. You know, there's older school breweries like from the 90s that are in our town that make a Kolsch, and we're already being, you know, people love our IPAs and they love our sours, but they come in and they're like, oh man, but they make a great Kolsch. You know, oh, they make a great Pilsner, you know, and it's like, that's how I see it, is you want to be a great beer company. You don't want to be known for just one thing, you know, or at least from our perspective, you know, so we're all about that experience. So we want you to walk in. I think right now we got a few Belgians, we got a table beer, we've got a strong ale, we've got, you know, a handful of IPAs, Kolsch, Czech Pilsner, so, you know, probably 13 different beers we're pouring right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I like the Czech Pilsner.
Oh, yeah, I was actually drinking that before I had this. Yeah, it's hot and humid, man. Like that's what you got to be drinking, you know?
Right.
So yeah, so I don't know, we opened up and the pandemic shut us down. Like by the time we opened up,
Right.
and we were lucky to own like the big parking lot behind us, and we're kind of in the center of the town. You know, people were traveling around and buying beer, so we made it. You know, we were able to kind of get through a funky time, and we have a lot of outside seating. So, yeah, I don't know. It was.
Yeah, you were able to. I guess maybe I don't know because you were not. You hadn't been in process that long, so you were able to pivot a little quicker than some other people.
Well, that's just it, right? I think you're 100%. When we're not. The guys that got hurt had been open for a few years, and they've got, you know, it's February going into March, and like up here, you know, the weather's starting to get better in April. So a lot of the breweries were like making keg after keg because the tourism season's starting to kick up. And all of a sudden it's, you know, it's like March 15th and you're like, oh, we're not buying that. All the restaurants are being shut down, right? That was what everybody up here was. But I wasn't in that situation. I was small. We got a 7-barrel brew system from Alpha, and at that time had like 4 15-barrel fermenters. And fast forward to today, we have 9 15-barrel fermenters. So we brew about 4 times a week, probably doing about 1,800 to 2,000 barrels a year right now. Probably 90% of that's IPA.
Well, I mean, that's what sells. Even though I always make fun of,
you know, it's a business at the end of the day, you know, and I feel like I'm always having the conversation with the brewers of like, yeah, man, like, what, you know, once we make this batch, we'll make a Pilsner, and then you're looking at that tank space, and a month goes by, you're like, damn, we could have made it. But that's, you know, you gotta have something for everybody.
Yeah, because when I go into the store, a lot of times I'll be like, IPA. I think I said it before. I feel like Indiana Jones sometimes hunting for something other than IPAs. Which, I mean, I enjoy IPAs, but sometimes you do want something a little different on your.
Well, I think that's the funny, because I'll look at these chats online, and a lot of guys are like, why do these brewers, you know, and so I think the consumers like, why are these breweries just making IPAs? Where the brewery owners are like, dude, why is all, like, you don't get it, you're the problem, and they're pointing the finger back at you. It's like, you're the one who only wants to drink that. So it's like, if you're that guy that's the 10% that doesn't want to drink it, you got to go fight the guy next to you and tell him you're the problem, man, because 90% of you only want to drink this. So if the brewers are going to stay in business, like, you have, like, but it's a fine line. Like, I've kind of drawn the line of, I'm not a big fan of smoothie sours, like we talked about before. So I try and, like, you know, we do have some morals and ethics about what we like in our beer. and, you know, and I think, we haven't ever had to kind of go across that line. Even in our IPA up here, a lot of New England's are pretty sweet forward. Ours isn't. We dry hop at a rate of 7 pounds to the barrel of all of our beer, which I guess a lot of people will call double dry hopped. And I always kind of refuse saying that, because to me it's gimmicky, where my brewer and I were like, well, if it tastes best like this, if this is the right amount of hops and this is where it tastes good. So a lot of IPAs up here are made with flaked oats and flaked wheat and different kind of to make it heavier. And we don't do that. So we're just like Pilsner malt, Golden Promise and pale wheat, and in 7 pounds of a barrel of hops. And you get, I don't know, the alpha acids that are in there. If you feel like you're drinking an IPA, not some thick, like oatmeal stout that's yellow. You know,
so does it lean more West Coast? Like, does it lean more West Coast?
No, I mean, it's still. It's still
hazy, yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting because we probably have a little more IBU than a lot of IPAs. Like the Treehouse sort of model is really like these sweeter forward kind of beers. So we let everything, you know, our beers take about 3 weeks, so all the sugars are fermenting out. So it's not super thick, but it's got incredible aromas and floral character from the hops of hopping that aggressively. They're just not very, they don't make us any money. That's the problem. but it's all right, man, because we set out to make really good beer, and we said we'll figure out how to make money later. And now I'm trying to figure out how to make money because we're spending so much money on hops. But I think it's an IPA that stands out because it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's not West Coast in the sense of bitterness, but it's not thick. And I think
gotcha.
You'll drink it this Saturday. You'll get to you'll get to know. But up here, it's probably the closest to Trillium. I don't know if you've ever had any Trillium beers, but it's a very similar like body to what Trillium does.
Yeah, I like all those New England breweries up there. So just taking a little step back in terms of opening ModestMan, like where'd the name come from? Like was that something that you already had in your pocket, or was that like workshop? Like how did you come?
I wish I had a good story for that. I had maybe it's okay. I told somebody it's not a good story, and they're like, no, that's a good story. I had like a series of dreams where I had this like I'd studied some sustainable agriculture for a while, and there's a thing called a flow form, and it was this like almost S-like kind of wavy thing. Okay. And I had this. I kind of woke up with these two lowercase m's, which isn't even what our logo looks like anymore. But yeah, sort of just kind of put a name to it. It was more about kind of finding the name was more about not doing what everybody else was doing. So at that time, everybody had a hop. Everything was geographical or, these very specific things. Right. Someone said to me, it's like Method Man and Modest Mouse had a baby. Yeah, it's all right. Kind of weird. It's kind of a weird thought, man. Know your brain. Yeah.
Now that you said, now I can't see it.
Could be called. We could have called Method Mouse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it came to you in a dream. That's a good story.
Yeah. Well, and it was about. I don't know where the brand will go. It may go beyond beer, so I didn't want it to be stuck within agriculture. I didn't want it to be stuck within geography. So it was kind of like, and then when I had it, when like 90% of the people in my circle didn't like it, I was like, okay, this is a good one.
Now you're also, if I remember correctly, you're also opening. Is it another location as well?
Yeah. So Keene is in that far like southwest corner of New Hampshire, and we're going to open a tap room at Portsmouth, which is the opposite side. So it's the New Hampshire has like a super small coastline between like Mass and Maine. So Portsmouth's like, maybe it has like 20 minutes of coastline. So I'd say 45 minutes north of Boston is Portsmouth. So it's like, it's basically the only city that most people outside of New England have heard of. I was at a beer festival in San Diego. They're like, where are you from? Oh, you're from New Hampshire? I'm like, yeah, we're in Keene. They're like, I've been to Portsmouth. I was like, I got to open a tap room in Portsmouth because that's the only. So it should be good, man. We were hoping to open in the fall. It's because of the tourism, Portland, Maine is the #1 travel to destination in the country, I think, for craft beer. Right. And I think Portland, Maine has the most breweries per capita. So if you're all that beer tourism, if you're flying into Boston, you've got to go through Portsmouth to get to Maine. And for some reason, the craft beer scene there, it's not bad, but it's not like really popping. So for us, we're going to brew where we are now, and then move our kegs and our cans across the state to that spot.
Right. Because I think the train, it goes to Portsmouth too. It doesn't go. I don't know if it goes to Keene, but I know.
No, you're right.
Amtrak goes. So it's an easy to get to if you just wanted to jump on a train and do your
right off.
Your trail. Right.
You been up that way?
Well, years ago we lived in Boston, but outside of Boston. But this was years ago. But I was just looking when I was looking at where Keene was and then where the other location was. I was like, well, they're a good decent amount of park. And then when I looked at the train did go to Portsmouth. So I was like, well, that's a good. I figured it had to be in terms of logistical wise where you could easily it's an easier destination, I guess, to get to by train and plane, I guess.
Yeah.
Where Keene is like in the middle of New Hampshire, kind of.
Yeah. In Keene, like it was odd how I ended up there like years ago, and it's not by any sense a mecca. It's a great place to raise a family. It's quiet. It was a great place to start the brewery, but and early on, like when the world was shut down, we had plenty of tourism kind of going out there, but it's not a place that people are often frolicking to.
Right.
In New Hampshire, like the spots that people want to go to are like up in the middle of the state. There's a lot of good like the White Mountains and stuff that's kind of touristy attractions. The western part of the state, I mean, that's kind of what maybe is special about it. It's just beautiful, but it's not it's not drawing in a ton of tourists, which is good and bad. So again, man, it was a good place to open a brewery. The people there appreciate the quality of the beer that we're doing, but I don't know. It's definitely like we're paying the bills, but when you're doing like really ingredient driven beer, like you got to kind of have, and again, and also we do some distribution, but it's not a super hoppy IPA doesn't really want to be in distribution. It's not happy with that. It doesn't want to be on a shelf. That's why, when people said like, why is there, why did Heady Topper and these other beers have a line? It partly was because, that's the best way for that beer to taste.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And well, if you keep on, continue growing in terms of ModestMan brand, then I'm sure it'll be a destination spot where more people will come to Keene. Like, this is a nice place to hang out. Yeah, and I'm sure that
I agree.
And that brings more other things.
Yeah, that's right. My philosophy, like, I'd be down with that. I just don't want to wait. Just have my, all my eggs in that one basket, right? So if they end up there, that's cool. But in the meantime, like, let's diversify and get to that other part of the state, But New Hampshire's like definitely on the map now. Like there was like before I opened, there would be that conversation on some chat, and he'd be like, "Yo, I live in San Diego, and my sister goes to school in Boston. I'm flying out. I'm driving to Hill Farmstead. Like, what do you guys recommend for breweries in New Hampshire?" And they'd be like, "Just skip it." And he's like, "Well, I can't skip it. I got to go through there to get there." And they're like, "There's no breweries worth your time." And now that conversation's starting to change, so that's good. And we're part of that conversation. So
that's cool. I know you. I mean, we ain't gonna keep you too much longer, but in terms of,
that's all right.
Like, I was curious to know, because you had kind of said it like how did you end up in, like, you've been all over the place? How did you end up in Keene anyway?
Yeah, man. So I had I was in Charleston, South Carolina in the mid 2000s, working at. I was working in the restaurant business, and there's a pretty famous chef right now named Sean Brock down there. And that was, I was a manager at McCrady's, which was his first restaurant. He had come from Nashville. And so right before a restaurant called Husk opened, I was running McCrady's with Brock, and I had I guess my third child had just been born. So I was in this like, mid 20s, late 20s, I think. Had a young family, and was like, trying to find that balance, because I love food and beverage, but it wasn't a sustainable, family life.
Right.
And while I was down there, I met a guy who was in law school, and he had lived in Long Island, and he had gone to this school. It's a Waldorf school, and they owned this camp near Keene, New Hampshire, where kids, like, it was cool. It was it's like 300 acres, and it was founded from the Steiner School right outside of Central Park. And it was a place of, like, the philosophy back in the 1930s was this school was like, had amazing, had basically everything you need in a school, but it didn't have the connection to nature. So they bought this like farm camp right outside of Keene, New Hampshire. So anyhow, I'm down there, I'm running this restaurant, and this guy going to law school, he had lived in Maine at one point, so we had a lot in common. He's like, "Yo, I know you're kind of like burning out. You got this young family. What do you think about coming up to Keene with me? You'd be the farmer and the culinary director of this camp." I'm like, "Whoa," I'm like, "Dude, I'm running like a top 10 restaurant in the country right now,"
Right.
And it was just that moment, right? We all have these moments. It's like, what do you want in your life? And we chose it. And, so all of a sudden, we get a house on this property. So you have like a 2-second commute to your job, and I'm cooking like buckwheat pancakes for a bunch of kids, but we're growing food organically, and I got stuck there for like 15 years in this like rural part of the state, but had another child, so we have 4 kids, and raised them. And then that whole time, I was making like clay oven pizza, growing food, like, just that whole farm to table thing,
right.
And but then the entrepreneur started to grow on me while I was there, and I missed the kind of perfectionist element of the restaurants I had been in. But so that was like, I was probably there at the camp from like 07 to 14, I think. And it was like, okay, so I just took like one of the most important parts of my career, but none of that stuff matters. You know what I mean? When you really look back on it, it's like,
right.
I definitely went in debt during that time, but a lot of, like, I learned a lot about myself. I got to work with my hands that I hadn't done before. I had the space to dream. The camp was so cool, man. We had kids from like the Bronx, all kinds of different classes and cultural diversity. So like, we're living in rural New Hampshire, but we got all kinds of people coming to this camp that were from all over the country, in different walks of life, different classes. So kind of had the best of everything,
Right.
And we transformed a lot of people's lives, man, because we were like passionate about what we did, and we were cooking really good food and everything from scratch. And I just think that somebody asked me, like, it's just what it comes down to is I'm passionate about whatever I'm doing,
Right.
So like, I don't necessarily just love beer or just love food. It's like, you just have that passion for living and doing better. And if you do that and you have that, it kind of rubs off on the people around you. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's a good philosophy. Just well, I just got like maybe one or two more questions. In terms, I don't know,
Yeah.
think about actions, but we always like to ask everybody in terms of like, what is your favorite beer style, and is there a beer was there a beer that made you say, oh, I really like craft beer?
This is a perfect segue. I swear I didn't, maybe I thought about this a little bit, but so this Saturday, something I just saw that's really exciting is Allagash Brewing, which is up in
Yeah.
Portland. They're teaming up with, I think it's Crowns and
Crowns and
Hops.
hops. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So Rob Todd is kind of like one of my biggest idols. I mean, he's the owner of Allagash, and to see him doing that with them is pretty exciting. So I had maybe 3 years ago, I think, I went to dinner with my wife, and we had this like Korean style meal with like I forget what the fish was, but it was like this, like the collar of a fish is. So it's a little bit fatty.
Right.
And it, so you had like some kimchi, and you had some different broths. And I got a beer by Allagash called Levante. And it was I think a 2-year, I may butcher this, but it was like a 2-year aged wild ale, organic Maine strawberries on bourbon barrels.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like, it wasn't just the beer, because I've had the beer since then, and it's great, but it was that experience, right? It was that whole sense of place, that every aspect of the meal we're eating and that beer, that to this day is my favorite beer I've ever had. I think, my brewery doesn't do any wild fermenting right now. It's kind of a dream of mine, but my two favorite breweries up in New England are Oxbow up in Portland, Maine, and Allagash. I love everything that Allagash stands for, and the beer that they make. So those are the wild farmhouse stuff is my favorite stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited to see a lot of the collaboration that come out of this year. That's always a highlight of the festival, is the some of the collabs that come together. Crowns and Hops is doing a lot of major moves in the space, and to see them pair out. I think they just posted maybe a couple of days ago about the collab they were doing with Allagash. So, and I think Allagash was there last year with someone else, I believe. So they are familiar with the collabs, but I'm excited to see what they bring this year. It should be cool. Well, the whole festival is always a good time.
So you went last year?
Yeah, I think we've been every year, well, except for the first year and the COVID year.
Okay.
So I think because we went when it originally was called Fresh Fest, and so we've been 2019, and then 20. Technically, I did attend because it was cyber, but I still went online to do it. But last year we went, and obviously, and this year we'll be there again. It's always a good time. It's always like some of the people you talk to all online or you see at other beer fests everyone comes together at this particular one. So it's always cool to see, and the fact that we kind of are participating this year as well.
So have you done a collab in the years past, or this is
no? This was our first time we even because everybody always asks us, "Are we going to do a collab?" So I was like, "Yeah." I always was like, maybe. But then because a lot of people kept on asking when we were going to do something, I was like, this year we'll put our name in the ring and help out and collab and see what happens. So it's we were excited to be involved. Day and Ed put together a good festival, so we were excited to be a part of it. and in any capacity, just even being attendees from years past, and also being and now um, working with you and the Modest Man family uh, is something we're looking forward to doing, and hopefully everybody comes out and comes to the table. I think they put out the map today on where everything is located, so
Oh, I
make
haven't
sure
seen that yet.
people come through and check us out. I think it's section 31, I think, or table 31. I'm not sure exactly,
Okay.
but I know 131, not 131. That's
I had
where,
a moment this morning where I was looking at the schedule. It was like, okay, it's 8 a.m. to like 9 p.m. It's like, oh man, that's a long day.
yeah.
But I think it's really like an evening festival, isn't it? It's like kind of starts later. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because I think there's some
VIP
VIP
stuff.
stuff that starts
Yeah.
a little earlier, but then I think the bulk of it, but it does go till 9 o'clock for sure because I think
Yeah.
some of the musical acts continue to go on because
Cool.
it is music and culture and all that stuff. And speaking about that, I know you talked about hip hop and stuff like that. So I'm gonna ask you some hip hop questions, like in terms of hip hop, like who is your favorite hip hop artist?
Well, have you picked up on anything yet? You know what that is? Hold on, let me get back in that. Can you even see it? So I sort of do it on the sly, and it's cool because like up in New Hampshire, nobody knows. But basically, all my cans, all my beer names are referencing some sort of old school hip hop in some capacity. Okay. So I'm 45, so I grew up in Maine, but I had Yo MTV Rap, so I didn't. Right. There was nothing, no real culture, But so like 86, 87, 88. That everybody in my group was listening to Leonard Skinner and Guns N' Roses, and I was like, that ain't for me, right? But like so, but what is for me? And then I got all right. So I'm gonna tell you a couple of my beer names. You tell me the artist. You ready?
Okay.
You gonna play this game? All
sure.
Right. Sunrise is in the East. You know it?
Sunrise in the East.
So it's one of my favorite beer names because one of my favorite sort of relationships between hip hop and beer is the West Coast East Coast feud. So J. Rue, The Damage, I think Sunrise in the East was like 93, 94, but it was like he kind of ripped on everybody.
Right.
But the sun rises in the East, right? And so it's like this New England IPA. And the crazy thing is like the West Coast, there's the West Coast IPA, the New England IPA, but the West Coast does not respect the New England IPA at all. Like they give no respect. So I entered our beer in a contest and I was like, man, come on, it's far superior. They don't give you, they're like, they tell me all this stuff I got to work on, like here's where you can improve next year. I was like, what are you talking about? So I love, I've always been an East Coaster, so I love the relationship between hip hop and beer and the West Coast East Coast feud.
You went deep in there. Dude,
I've had way too much time to think about this.
So now that I know what era you going like.
Yeah. No, that's where I'm from, man. So I was a huge De La Soul fan. So I got Balloon Mind State's one of my beers.
Okay.
So this is my favorite beer is It's the Most Beautiful Thing in the World, which was Keith Murray.
Keith Murray, yeah.
Yeah. That dude, come on. That name, it's one of our best beers, but I love that name. So a lot of what I do is, so within an IPA, I'll do a double IPA, a single IPA, maybe a pale, and I'll use that same malt structure and hop structure. But it's good for the consumer, right? Because if they're like, oh, I love Most Beautiful Thing in the World, but I don't want a double IPA, right? It's not. So I make a pale ale. Keith Murray had another album called It's a Beautiful Thing. So we've got our pale ale and our 7% in that same series is It's a Beautiful Thing. Pale, It's a Beautiful Thing. What else I got? I do a once a year beer called Mad Villainy, which is a tribute to the MF Doom. We do Center of Attention, which was Pete Rock's I. I do some Run the Jewel stuff, but I try and do a lot of what we do is I'm not trying to steal from somebody's culture, and I'm trying to do it in a way that's like out of respect, and it's not hip hop in your face, right? Like the can art, everything. It's not. It often strikes a balance of real beauty, and just sort of uses these names because it was it's the music I loved, So it was like a huge kind of made me who I was as a person, where everybody in my culture was going this way and I was going that way. And so hip hop in the, late 80s, early 90s was everything to me. So every Tuesday, man, me and my cousin were buying hip, whatever came out. We were scraping the money, stealing money from my parents, buying hip hop albums. And so when it came time, to do this, it was like, well, everybody's looking for like an identity. I don't have a partner in this business. So it allowed me from the creative standpoint to just do what, it's kind of scary because I can't blame it on anybody, but it allowed me to have the true vision of what the art and what I wanted. So we worked with this artist, Grayson Rotowski, who's like an oil painting artist, fine artist out of New York, who lives in Spain right now. And he does all of our stuff. And it's beautiful, man. Like we put a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of effort into our can art. Cause that's what, with this whole expression of the New England IPA up here, it's like, I saw it and I liked it, but I was like, oh man, it could be a lot more. So that's kind of what we're trying to move towards. That's
what's up. So that's,
it's a lot.
And like you said, I mean, it's not like blatant, like, this is like, unless like some of those, I'll be like, I don't know. Yeah. Like some of the things, like Keith Murray is, because that's one of my favorite songs, easily identified.
But and what's cool is 90% of the people that drink that beer have no idea.
Right.
And maybe if I was in a more urban area, people would be like, oh, okay. But because we're not, it allows me to be kind of like who I am and what I care about. But like, man, there's there's a British rapper. I can't even think of his name. Who's the whatever. Run Come Save Me was his album. And so I dropped this beer, and a guy across the street from my brewery, he owns like a sneaker place, he's like the guy that you can get your shoes from. He's like, yo man, you did a cult, is that for me? I was like, yeah, whatever. So he thought it was like teaming up with his sneaker joint. And I was like, no, but that's fine if that's what you think. So everybody can take it on, they can find some way to make it work for their own life. That's fine. But yeah. So that's, we're trying to infuse beauty to it, but give it a sense of place and a sense of like, what I love and what I care about. So that's what it is.
But no, did you answer the question? Like, who is your favorite MC?
I think, De La Soul definitely had the biggest impact on me.
Okay.
I think, as a band, I love KRS-One as like a true MC, I think.
Right.
But I would say De La Soul made the biggest impact because I think, I was listening to a lot of the NWA stuff and kind of gangsta stuff. And then I remember my sister got some like Soul to Soul. She asked for Soul to Soul, which was that 1988, like what pop stuff. And my aunt bought the album. She got the wrong album and she got 3 Feet High and Rising, and my sister threw it in the trash. I was like, what is this? And it changed my life, man. Cause how else? I was a 12-year-old kid growing up in Maine. Like how else was I going to get hip hop,
Right.
So now I got 3 Feet High and Rising, and I'm like, and they were just different, they were like, I don't know what they were, hippies, gentle, something, man. But like that stuff, as a 12-year-old kid, you were just like, man, this is good. And then that brought you into Tribe, and that brought you into Black Sheep. I was just listening to Black Sheep the other day. Man, they're just that stuff is so good. And now I have 25-year-old kids, 22-year-old kids. So now, they force me to like get into all the relevant stuff. So I can't go wrong now, man.
Yeah, because now it is different now.
It's different now, but and that's like I'm into. What was I into the other day? It was like J. Cole, and they're in my 22-year-old daughter goes to school in DC, and she was like, "Dude, you're just getting into J. Cole." I'm like,
that is true. I would have to say the same thing because we're in the same age bracket, and you just getting into J. Cole?
It takes me a while, man. It takes me a while, and I'm like, give me some props for getting into it, But
right, because you could have just stayed. You could have stayed in the late '80s, early '90s. Like, you know what? This the golden age hip hop.
I'm just staying in the gold. My wife's like, you can't just listen to this forever. Like, you're gonna ever branch out? I'm like, no, it's so good. There's still stuff I haven't ever listened to.
Yeah, and especially if you go deeper in the underground, like in MF Doom zones and Atlanta, all that kind of stuff, and the and even if you start going to West Coast back in the day, and like the hieroglyphics and all that stuff,
I love that,
and all that good stuff back then. So it's a plethora of music out there because a lot of people are making it, and it wasn't as I guess easy to get as it is now, because now you can stream anything pretty much now. So now it's easier to consume
You had to work. You had to work for it back then,
right?
You know,
right. And if it wasn't at your local shop, especially back in the day, you'd be like, yeah, well, you would have to record it like on MTV Raps, or if it happened to come on the radio, you had to record it. So I get it. So I mean, so yeah, there's definitely things that you did in his, but I have younger children, but they're in the. Well, my son is in the hip hop, so some of the things I'd be like, I don't get it at all.
I know.
There is some things I'm like, okay, I understand that. I get that's cool, but there are some things. Even some of my younger, and they're like in their 18, 19 year old range. I'd be like, that is garbage. I don't know what that is.
I know. I say that too, and then I'm like, all right, do I really like? Can I give it a chance? I'm like, no, I can't give it a chance.
Nah, I try. I gave it a chance. I still be like, what are you like? Some there might be hit or miss. Like there'll be something like, oh, okay, this is cool, but there's some things I'd be like, it's not meant for me, I guess. So
yeah.
Like some people say back in the day, there was some like people like my mother didn't like some of the hip hop that I listened to back in the day. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So
that's why when my son listens to like, I'll catch him listen to some 90s stuff. It's always Mobb Deep. It's weird. It's like all the stuff he only likes like Mobb Deep and Wu-Tang. But I'm like,
wow.
but you know, because he's definitely like wants to make it known that he's not going to just eat up my 90s hip hop. Like he's like, I got to work for it. You know what I mean? But
well, Wu-Tang and Wu-Tang Mobb Deep are two solid choices.
It's weird that those are the two that like those make the cut. But if I get any of that other stuff, like any native tongue stuff around, it's like it doesn't fly. But maybe that's the age he's at, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be too. It might be not. It's not. Maybe it's not grimy enough.
Yeah,
native tongue. It's like more.
That's what I think. That's what I think. It was too soft. Yeah, he's in the grimy age. Yeah. Even though the stuff he listens to is soft, I think. But whatever.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, we always like to. We want to thank you for coming. Ash from ModestMan Brewing.
Thanks for having me, man.
But before we wrap up, we always like to know how people can find you on Instagram and the address at the brewery in Keene, all the good stuff.
Yeah. So where are we? We're ModestMan Brewing on Instagram. We got a Facebook page. We're at 100 Main Street, Keene, New Hampshire. We'll be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire soon. Our beer's in distribution throughout the state of New Hampshire, but not in many places. Our beer has been traded for. But you can find it. It's not that hard. But the easiest place to find us is down in Pittsburgh this coming Saturday with these guys right here.
There it is.
If you can come there, we're gonna be pouring at Mike's, like I said earlier. I think Friday and Saturday are some of our IPAs, and pass me another, our Imperial Sour we'll be pouring. If you can't come to that, then I don't know what to tell you. You got to come to
that. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to miss out on the Imperial Sour.
That's right.
And every other beer that's out there, because there's a lot of combination. A lot of people that we know are doing collaboration, so we're excited to see what they bring, and we're excited to taste everything. I like to drink all the beers. I didn't actually. I guess one question in terms of, I know you had mentioned the logo was one thing before, but what is what's the logo now? Like where'd that concept come from? Yeah.
So this is the artist that we're working with and who's out of Spain right now created that. So it's essentially supposed to be two M's. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that you
but but that's what I love about it, man. It kind of like when you look at it, it just sort of takes on everybody's eyes kind of see it differently, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was looking for. There was just this strong logo that wasn't a grain or
something that can go, like you said, branch out to like other things, like
whatever
clothing.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Modest man hiking gear, or
we sell a lot of merch. That was it's a lifestyle. That's kind of the idea. And that's, now that we have this logo, like that's kind of where it's allowing us to kind of go in those different directions.
All right.
What size? Will you email me the size of your team so I can bring some stuff down on Saturday?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Sure.
We got some hats, we got shirts. So just give me. I know there's a couple big cats up in that group. No.
Yeah, that's me. Well, I might be.
Are you the big guy?
I'm the biggest guy.
We got some big sizes.
Yeah, but we got some. We got. Yeah, Yeah, me, I'm probably the biggest guy. Everybody else is a little or we got one little tiny guy.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I got some women cut small, so we'll bring it
no, I didn't say that, Lou. I said that. I didn't say that.
You can't razz them if they're not there. I guess it sucks.
Oh,
yeah.
no, he can still. Well,
we can still mess with him.
Yeah, because he'll hear it and then he'll have.
Yeah,
he'll
okay. Then they're gonna have to back it up.
He'll be there on Saturday for sure.
Okay.
So he'll definitely be able to.
All right.
To say it. If you want to check out Brews and Banter Podcast, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Bruising Banter Podcast. You can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can even say Amazon Music. Please play Brews and Banter because we are on Amazon Music. So you can say Alexa, I'm sorry. Please play Brews and Banter Podcast because we are on Amazon Music, as well as Pandora and iHeartRadio. Like I said, everywhere. If you want to check out and get merch, you can go to www.bruisingbanter.com. And also find out where else we're playing and watch us out. Remember to smash that like button on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram as well. If you want to follow me, Rob G, Rob Stay Bruising. Bing, bing, bing. Shout out to the rest of the crew. Dev, Dreams Crab Brew. I am 302 Yoda and Lou Belgium. Shout out to all those fellas. I know life always gets in the way, and you got to do your family duties comes first. But again, I want to thank Ash Sheehan for coming through from ModestMan Brewing.
Thanks for having me, Rob. We're looking forward to this weekend.
Until next time, I want to make sure everybody's down there and it's Pittsburgh, Barrel and Flow this weekend, August 13th.
Yep.
Yeah, August 13th. All right, I'll see you there. Peace.
Peace.